Would you like to play a game? How about global thermonuclear war?
Ha ha ha, just kidding. I'm not that crazy computer from the movie War Games. It's just me, the no vacancy bot, introducing this week's show. I hope you enjoy it.
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the No Vacancy Podcast with me, your host, Glenn Hausman. I am excited and delighted to have you here today. Let me tell you, it has been a whirlwind. As you know, I've been traveling all over the place, and I'm just excited to be in my home office for one day. Woohoo! I'm very excited. Now, if you're not getting our weekly newsletter, why not? Make sure you just, right now, you got your phone in front of you, you're addicted to it, text the word hotel to 66866, and you will get subscribed to the weekly newsletter. And check out the all-new NoVacancyNews.com and let me know what you think. And of course, I want to thank Duetto, because this show is brought to you in part by Duetto, the revenue strategy technology platform that thousands of hotels out there are using to make more money. And you know what? I did an interview recently with their CEO, Patrick Bosworth, and I think you're going to love it because it tells you all about revenue strategy, what you need to know, and how Duetto can help you. Check them out at getrevenueresults.com. Learn all about them. I think you'll love the fact that they can make you more money even as we're at the top of the market. Now, I'm excited because I've been all over and I've been talking and I do a lot of speaking gigs, and through this relationship I've gotten to know Chris Green, who's been a guest on this podcast before. Now, of course, he's the COO and principal at Chesapeake Hospitality, and he's going to be coming on every once in a while as a regular guest here in the first segment. Chris, I'm excited to have you aboard.
Glenn, super glad to be with you today.
Yeah, this is going to be fun because, one of the things that I feel like I've been missing, I speak to the brand guys all the time, but I don't have a regular management company guy coming on and keeping everything kosher for us here in the business. So I'm really stoked to hear what your opinion is going to be. And I say that because as we're recording this, it's Purim, as you know, because everybody knows when Purim is, right? So I'm keeping with the Jewish references today. So, Chris, lots is going on in the hospitality industry, and it's fascinating to where we're going. But I should say this. Before we get into it, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Let's get the show on the road. I'm trying to roll out a new little tagline there. So, thanks for being patient with me there, Chris. Chris, what's on the top of your mind these days? I mean, so much is going on, and one issue that I've been seeing, we're at peak market. I'm not talking operating profits here right now. What I'm focused on is we're at the top of the market with the stock market, and it's making companies feel rich. And you're seeing it play out because companies are getting scooped up seemingly every single week, and this industry consolidation is happening. And while everyone is heralding these headlines, what great moves it is, I'm starting to get suspicious about overall industry consolidation and what it means for hotel owners, what it means for management companies, and eventually what it means for the customer itself. Am I being naive here to think it might be an issue for people? How do you see industry consolidation affecting your business?
No, Glenn, I think that's a really astute point that you're gathering. I mean, my concern continues to be that, basically where this is coming from is what you said, is we're at the top of, it looks like to be the top on the financial markets. We know that we're talking financially in the hotel business about RevPAR kind of cresting and being at some all-time highs. And so the brands and some of the individual brands have seen that if they're going to have accretive, additive revenues to their portfolios, they may have to go out and acquire other business lines just to continue growing the enterprise.
Right.
And by doing that, what I see happening is taking optionality away from third-party owners, from asset owners. They're just basically taking optionality out of it and forcing people to make decisions between basically these big, huge conglomerations of the brands or hitting into the independent space, which we are seeing happen as well. So in the end, even though the consumer is going to have some good optionality, it's going to be really placed with just a very few companies.
Yeah, and that's kind of what that's kind of what makes me nervous from the consumer end and from your ability to operate hotels most effectively. Now, I want to preface this by saying that strategically speaking, the major hospitality companies are theoretically doing the right thing because they need to deliver that value to the shareholder. And that comes in a lot of cases by buying up other companies. It's a normal part of the cycle. We've seen it. We've been through it with the airline industries over the last 10 years. We've consolidated that a lot. But to me, I would think as an owner of hotels or in your role as a management company, as well as ownership groups, what is that going to do when you're forced to deal with, what I would say is an oligopoly where you're dealing with 4 or 5 major companies? It's got to be a lot tougher for you to enjoy some of the freedoms that you've had out there as when there were 10 or 20 major companies.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It comes down to, like I said, optionality for the owners where they can take. I mean, if you think about Starwood Marriott, right? That was always a big option platform where you could go with the more buttoned up Marriott approach, or you could go with this. If you had a little bit of an asset that maybe didn't fit that buttoned up approach, you might go with the more flair that you associated with Starwood. But that's kind of one now, right? So, and then when they add the verticals up and down, when all these companies add verticals all the way down to literally economy segment. And you're right, they're smart to do it for their shareholders and for the accretive nature to the bottom line. But what they're doing is they're basically removing optionality. So you're going to have basically blue, brown, and you're going to have, like a few of the outliers like Hyatt and a few others, but then that's going to be what your choices are, IHG, and then you're going to be independent. So the consumer is going to still see a ton of options. But those ultimately are going to get funneled even tighter into brand optionality. And I think if you really, really look deeply into it, what they've seen in the brands is they've seen some of these things like Kimpton and some of the other independent brands that were launching super strong through the high RevPAR environment. But what have the brands done? They're smart. The brands are smart. They've gone in with Curio and Autograph and everything, Unbound by Hyatt, and they're going to fill in that space too, because they've got the horsepower behind them to take on one-off independence. So it's going to create a highly complex and competitive environment. It's for us as managers, I'm really brand agnostic. I mean, I manage what people give me, but it does create a very competitive landscape when you may be managing against a hotel down the street that's a soft-branded independent within the same family of brands that you're running a fully flagged hotel.
Right. I think that's an interesting too. And then let's add in, people are not just, the major brands are not just buying properties, but they're also introducing a lot of new brands as well. So all of a sudden you've got like brands like True, which are really making their mark out there. It's a great alternative to Hampton, which makes it a little bit more challenging, I would think, as well. But overall, you think this is great for customers? Because if I'm looking at it from the customer point of view, I'm saying, I've got 32 brands in the Marriott Starwood family in which I could earn points and rewards. Or I'm looking at the 21 from Wyndham now that they've closed on WoodSpring Suites and American Inn, for example, and have the La Quinta coming down the pike. I'm sorry, WoodSpring went to Choice. My apologies. I don't want to make any mistakes there. So, do you think consumers are going to like this, or are they even going to be aware of this? Because a lot of times, they don't even know, Taco Bell and Pizza Hut are owned by the same company.
Yeah, I actually think that the broader the expanse of each one of the brands. I mean, I think Marriott's got 31 or 34 brands. Like I think the broader they get, the more confusing it's going to be to the consumer, because most consumers go directly to one of the OTAs initially for their searches, unless they are a dyed-in-the-wool Hilton Honors member or whatever. They go to Expedia, and there are so many different choices, whether it's so-and-so by Tapestry or so-and-so by Autograph or a full-serve Marriott or a Cambria, and people are like, what is a Cambria? Well, there's a beautiful Cambria in downtown Nashville, and it's a gorgeous hotel, and it's on par with a Hilton. So, I mean, the consumers, I think, are going to have a little bit of confusion, and that's where it's been so strong, and it continues to be strong, is this third-party verification of quality of hotels through all of the Google Plus and the metrics that you can get through TripAdvisor. That's going to be the benchmark. It's not necessarily going to be the underlying brand as we go into the future, because this next generation, Glenn, just doesn't care. They want the best possible stay.
Right.
And they really are not points driven like our generation is, my generation.
Yeah, we're the same generation, and I would say I am very points driven. As a matter of fact, I'm taking a trip to Spain on behalf of a client, and I opted to fly with my airline as opposed to someone else's to take a less quality seat just so I could get the points. It's that pathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the issues that I've seen is, I'm wondering if this is changing, and I'd be curious to get your perspective. One of my favorite books from the early 2000s is a book called The Paradox of Choice, and it's written by psychologist Barry Schwartz. And the whole book proffers that by eliminating the consumer choices, it can greatly reduce anxiety for shoppers. And I'm curious if that is relevant anymore in the hospitality field when you bring up something such as they don't really care about brands. They just care about the experience overall.
It may be. And you know, listen, I'm a management company, so I want to be careful not speaking on behalf. I know that some of our friends over in Bethesda that have got these massive offices and massive research can probably speak to this better. I'm just giving you my sense as an operator that I do see that hotels that perform well from word of mouth, feedback, and the hotels that are on the front page of TripAdvisor and Google Plus reviews, they can drive volume just like a hotel with a brand behind them, because they can drive, they get those bookings. So there's got to be something to the fact that there's enough people out there that are searching more for a guaranteed, verified peer experience that are out there searching for the brands. Now, as that filters down to the fourth and fifth page of TripAdvisor, I think you're going to right now be still stronger with the brand behind you. And I think those people are probably going to choose a branded hotel where you can get surety. You know, if you're going to a full service Marriott, you're going to get a certain quality of stay. If you're on the fifth page.
Yeah, I didn't even.
That makes sense. What I'm saying.
It makes sense. Although I didn't even realize there was a fourth or fifth page on TripAdvisor because I never looked.
Nobody
past the
does.
First one.
Nobody does. So
yeah, that must really change the dynamics for you, because you always have to be, right there at the top, and even in order to capture that customer attention for them to even think about considering you, at all. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's very tough. I mean, we've kind of set a motto that all of our hotels have got to be in the top 5 in their respective markets in TripAdvisor. And that's not easy. I mean, like the Georgian Terrace, which is an asset, it's a fantastic hotel. And right now it's 17 of all the hotels in Atlanta. And I mean, we're talking about, the Mandarin Oriental and other hotels that we've got to jump over to get in the top 5.
Right.
That's a Herculean task.
Yeah, that's tough, but I suspect that you're probably coming in at a few dollars less than the Mandarin. So if people are looking for a hotel that's not at the ultra luxury level, then you're probably right there towards the top. I've stayed there, and I only say that because I've had great experiences there. And might I add, if you want to learn about the history of the Georgian Terrace, check back about a year ago. We did a great podcast on the history of that property and how really cool it is. So, all these brands, Marriott's got 32 brands like we were talking about, all of this consolidation. Do you feel that these companies can continue to have brands that are very distinct within the portfolio, or at some time is that whole notion of, clear swim lanes that we're going to have for each of the brands really become muddled, and it's just kind of everybody jumping in the pool at the same time?
Now I'm only speaking from my own guess. I don't know the answer to this question.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right?
I think that in the next couple of years, this is just a total whiff, I'm taking at it, but
good. That's what this show's all about.
I don't think there's going to be 32 brands at Marriott. I think there's going to be some that are folded into something else. I just don't see how you can have. I don't see the differentiation between a Sheraton and a Delta necessarily, or I don't know how they're going to. I mean, it's such a tight window of designation between those two hotels, and then maybe bumping up to an older full-serve Marriott. Like those three are kind of jamming in the same area. So how are you going to do that? And then, same thing in the other brands, where even when they're going down to the economy segment, IHG with Avid. I know they talk about it being kind of in between a couple of the other offerings, but those offering bands, Glenn, are getting so tight that I don't, do I want an Express, or do I want to Avid, or do I want to go to a True, or I'm in the business and it's confusing.
Yeah, totally. And I think some of the executives of some of these companies are probably confused too, although I'm not going to call anyone out on that. What I think is, and I've said this on stage an awful lot, that I feel like the brands are very focused on swim lanes, and they're like, well, this brand is, $3 more a night, $5 more a night than that brand, so it's a different category. I think that we have a weakness in our business by looking at it from the ownership management perspective as opposed to seeing how the consumers are really looking at it. I don't think customers are really looking at it like, oh, this is a distinct brand because it's $3 to $5 cheaper. I just don't think they're educated enough to understand that.
Correct. And there's no way in the page view time of life that we live in today, in today's technology society, that you can ever adequately translate a brand's, like what the brand means quickly as people are scrolling quickly through a page on their phone where they're booking a mobile reservation. I just don't see how you can that fast portray the differences between each brand on a one little page on your phone as we're trying to book. So,
all right. So, as you know, I like to just kind of surprise people with topics, and you got me thinking about this mobile thing now. So I feel like I want to talk about that for a minute or two real quick. Does that change how you folks have to operate as a management company now that guests are looking at their phones 24 hours a day, when they're thinking about traveling, when they're preparing to book, when they're booking, when they're at your hotel, and when they leave your hotels?
Yeah, so you're going to throw me a curve. I won't have the name of the company, but I actually had a meeting with our e-commerce department yesterday, and we've got a very robust program that's pointed towards mobile only, Glenn. And I wish I had the name for you, but it basically accelerates. It accelerates our link. So if someone's driving down the road and they're heading to Tampa, Florida, and they type in hotels in Tampa, we have a system that accelerates our presence on the mobile device and sends them a highly mobilized, easy to book while you're in transition booking page for our hotel.
That's cool.
And we've had tremendous success. Right now we're doing about a 30-to-1 ROI on the spend on that. I know it's in a test phase. We're doing it at about 6 hotels, but mobile booking is, it's off the charts what's going to mobile. And so people are working on it hard and being able to bump yourself to the top of the search. And what it does is it immediately tells you this hotel is a top 10 TripAdvisor hotel. So it gives you like the really critical key data to make it an easy decision to book.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And I didn't even know that there was something like that happening. So that's pretty cool. And for everyone listening out there, if you're not highly focused on the mobile scene, then you might as well not be in business in 5 years from now, because that's completely where we're going. I see it now. I look at the numbers I'm getting for our novacancynews.com site, and you should go click on that a lot. I'm getting so much more on mobile than I anticipated when we were in the development process for the site. So never underestimate how powerful and successful mobile can be for your business is the lesson I would take away.
Glenn, I was watching, as I'm sure a lot of people were. I was watching the Olympics past couple of weeks, and I can't think if it was AT&T or Verizon or who it was, but they had a whole. They ran this commercial every day, and it basically said, it had pictures of the kids laying on their floor with their tablets, and it's like the tablet and the phone in your hand are more powerful than any computers we've ever had in history. Why do you have a computer anymore? Right. Everything's available mobile. And their pitch was really to use your Verizon account or whatever and get rid of cable modems or whatever it is. But the point being that I got out of it was, we're not even going to have like desktop computers in a certain amount of time. We're just going to all be on tablets and mobile and who knows what else. So
it's got to be really tough for you as a management company operating hotels to deal with this technology issue from the point of view of, what is culture going to find important and what isn't, and therefore how should we allocate those resources?
It is. It's difficult. And I could get a little bit sideways on this topic right now because as a management company, I think we're in a really interesting phase on the pure management fundamentals that's going to require absolute perfection on your execution on the day-to-day stuff because we go through kind of a flattening of RevPAR. And then you got to do that while we've had this big run-up in this is what I'll say. If you haven't spent time in the past 6 years getting your mobile platform and your tech platform and some of your guest communication platform in good shape, I don't know if you're going to be able to do it in the next 2 years because things are going to be tight.
Right.
So you better have already done it. But if you haven't, you better hurry.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And how about this? Why don't you think on some of these issues, and the next time we get you back, let's talk a little bit more about how technology is changing the way you do your business on a day-to-day basis. I think that would be really fascinating to talk about.
I will.
Right. Cool. All right. So, I would be remiss, Chris, if we didn't talk about, upcoming industry conferences. We're right on the cusp of the Hunter Conference, and then I'm going to be at the AHOA Annual Convention, where, by the way, No Vacancy is the official podcast of the AHOA Convention and Trade Show, the largest hospitality convention trade show in the world. I'm going to be there capturing stories and advice from the thousands of Americans living out that American dream every single day, including some of the big names in the industry. And I even got Red Roof sponsoring it, so look for the Big Clear podcast booth with the big red roof on it. Come by, say hello. Let's do a little recording together. But, Chris, Hunter Conference, that's where we really first started to get to know each other. I really like that event. It's kind of laid back. It's kind of, to me, it serves the same goals as NYU and Alice, but it's a lot less stiff. Not as cool and casual as the Lodging Conference, which I love, but I find everyone's really approachable, easy to talk with, and I see that deals get done. What are you thinking about when you're going into the Hunter Conference this year?
Yeah, I'm excited to get down there. There's an energy right now in the industry that's really good. I mean, we're like I said, we're coming off of this peak and we're kind of flattening out. We're still hanging out. I mean, I don't know if you saw the data that came out of January. We're still all-time high occupancies. So there's energy, but we do have some things that are changing. So I'm looking forward to what the banks are going to be saying down at Hunter, what the lenders are going to be saying, capital sources, because interest rates are not as good as they used to be. I think there's some tentativeness on, the gap between ask and bid on hotels. So it'll be interesting. I know there's some deals getting done. I've heard about some that are going to be happening, but the spreads are a little bit wider right now between the seller and the buyer. And then you throw in the lending community with a little bit higher interest rates, then you're going to have a little bit of some questions about how the deal quality is going to get done and whether they're going to get done. But I think you might see some people just step out in faith and say that this is, even though this is a softening, that this is not a retraction, because I still see the future hanging out at 2.5% of growth, right. And if that's the truth, and it's all ADR growth, we should be okay. So I think it's going to be fun. I've actually got several clients that are meeting me down there that are going to be doing some meeting with some banks and lenders and working on new deals. So I think it's going to be a great conference, and I do love it. It's a very casual, approachable event, is how you put it.
Yeah. Oh, and I should say to everybody listening, if you're at the Hunter Conference, come by and see my panel. I can't remember what it is. I think it has to do on brands, or maybe that's what I'm doing at NYU. I don't know. I'm doing a panel. Come by, see it. There'll be some great executives that are going to be there on that particular panel, and I'd love to say hello to everybody in person. Now, Chris, when it comes to this whole thing with the banking, I was at an event this week where I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of owners behind the scenes. Are you finding that what they were saying is they're being required to put in a lot more cash now into certain deals to get properties going? One guy I know is building 12 hotels right now simultaneously, and he's finding that the access to the amount of capital that he wants is getting a little bit tougher. Is that an observation that you're seeing, or is there anything unique about the capital markets that are interesting to you?
Nope, that's exactly right. I mean, that's what we're hearing. I mean, 2 years ago you were getting some. I mean, there was actually some 80-20 money out there at a certain point a couple of years ago when we'd been in our fifth year of the run. I really hear like it's pulled back to 60-40 now, 65-35. Depending on the sponsor. The equity slugs are much larger right now, which that always holds up deals. It just does.
Okay, so.
Even though, Glenn, as an operator, I love hotels that are not heavily levered, right?
Yeah,
because
right, of course.
It creates operational challenges for us if they're heavily levered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's a little bit, so it's like a good news, bad news kind of a scenario. So it's not necessarily a pro or a con. It's just a changing state of the way things are going.
Correct.
Yeah, interesting. All right. What about thinking again about the financial stuff, do you feel that that will slow up new development? And if it does slow up new development, is that necessarily a bad thing? Because I always see there's a schism in the market. We want a lot of development because that's great for one side of the business. But then you got the operators there who are seeing a lot of new hotels come into their neighborhoods, and that's not necessarily good for them. What's your opinion on a well-balanced approach to growth as a management company operator?
I'm a little surprised. Late last fall, I think demand and supply crossed for the first time again. I mean, we had supply growing really rapidly, and I think they were crossed back for a little while.
They did, by 1%.
Right, but now with all this new announcements that I've seen, there's been a ton of new announcements, and I haven't seen the numbers this month, but I bet they're running side by side, so that actually surprises me. And I don't know if that was projects that were pending that people just decided to go ahead with. It's a natural business cycle, Glenn, and I think if there's any time in the market that we can sustain it is at these all-time highs. So if you figure that we're running these all-time high RevPARs and you add this new supply and it puts a temporary 5% pullback on RevPAR because of the demand, we're still only pulling back 5% from all-time highs. So, and then we're going to grow again with new ADR on this new product. And I think it'll be fine. I just think that it's going to be a more difficult marketplace because you are going to have older. I manage a lot of hotels that are in a difficult competitive position because maybe they're not a brand new asset, they're being reflagged. And so I've got a brand new, you name it, coming down the street that creates a competitive landscape. But as a manager, you just got to figure out how to best perform in your hotel, which here's the deal. I don't owe as much on mine as you do on your brand new hotel. I can be way more flexible in my operations. Right? So
that's interesting. Yeah, that's why I love talking to guys like you because, I talk a good game, but I don't know any of this kind of stuff, right? So that's a fascinating little nuance that I never would have picked up on. So that's really cool. Any other thoughts that you're looking forward to about the Hunter Conference? I mean, I just love bumping into people and having great conversations and, enjoying those cocktail parties and stuff.
No, I love seeing all of my peer set down there, and I work really hard to talk to all of the other management companies to see what they're doing and what they're hearing. We even though we're in a competitive industry, we've got a great synergy between all of us, and there's a lot of issues on the management company side that we talk about as a group that we want to make owners aware of because we sit between owners and the asset, and so we have a very different perspective. And we serve several masters, right? We serve banks, we serve the owners, we also serve the clients, the guests, and the brands. And so we get this unique perspective, and it's good to sit with my peer set. And it's a great time to hear how they're doing, what challenges they're seeing, and kind of formulate opinions and hear. So I always take something away from them. I hear something cool somebody's doing, or I meet a new vendor who's got something really exciting going on, and then we work on integrating that into our platform. So I spend my time as wisely as I can at every conference I go to get benefit.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. Just talk, meet with people, ask a lot of questions. And that's the thing about conferences like Hunter. I don't necessarily see that some of the others on the road, but at Hunter, everybody's just like, hey, how are you? Sure, I'll share this stuff with you. We're all in it together. And that to me is so important.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you go to a conference, you should be tired at the end, but you should have 5 or 6 takeaways of things you want to either learn about, research, or implement in your organization. Because there's a lot of smart people in our business doing a lot of cool things, and you just got to be open to just getting out there, shaking hands, and you never know what you're going to run across.
Yep.
So.
All right, great. So listen, as I figured, we totally got caught up in a lot of great conversation that I didn't expect to have, and we had so many different topic points yet to discuss. I think we should save those for next time. I'd love to have you on after the Hunter Conference, and let's talk a little bit of wrap-up on there. We'll talk this technology issue and, maybe even have a cocktail or two.
Sounds good, Glenn.
All right, everybody. So I want to thank Chris Green for being here, COO and Principal of Chesapeake Hospitality, one of my favorite management company guys out there. I hope you guys enjoyed listening too. Now I want you to stick around because we've got some great interviews. Oh, Chris, before you go, I totally forgot to say, it's time for your shameless plug.
Oh, my shameless plug.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
how can people find you? Hey, how can they hire you to manage their hotel? What do they got to do?
Listen, Chesapeake is we're focused highly in the full-service arena. You can find us at ChesapeakeHospitality.com. Our core values are honesty, integrity, and humility, and we will not do a deal where we don't think we can win for you. So come ask us.
With a great interview, you won't want to miss it. Stay tuned, and I'll see you on the other side of the ad. Thanks for listening.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Glenn Hausman, and you know me from the No Vacancy podcast, but I have got an all-new show coming, and I'm partnering up with the #1 guy in hospitality, Mr. Anthony Melchiori.
Now, it's called the yin and yang of hospitality.
That's right.
So I need to know going forward, because I'm a control freak, am I yin or yang?
I'm definitely the one that starts with Y, and you could be whichever one you want to be.
I'll be the one that starts with Y.
All right, so you're going to have more great banter just like this every single episode on the yin and yang of hospitality, found wherever your favorite podcasts are available. Any final thoughts?
Yes, I'm yang.
All right, I'm Ying. Thanks for listening.
Back to the show. It's No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
All right, so, a lot of times I do these interviews, and it's not so exciting. But today, I'm really, absolutely stunning and excited because I've been trying to track down this next interview for what seems like forever. She's too busy jet-setting all over the world to talk to me, but I think we got her cornered in an office. And finally, I have Lindsey Ueberroth on the line, and she's the CEO of Preferred Hotels and Resorts, who happens to be celebrating 50 years anniversary, although I don't think she's quite celebrating her 50th anniversary yet. Lindsey, welcome aboard. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Glenn. It's a pleasure to be having this conversation with you.
Yeah, I feel like, we've been trying this forever. I think the last time we met was probably an NYU conference, getting on 2, maybe 3 years ago. And ever since then, I just feel like our orbits are just not coming in line with each other. So I'm so glad that this finally worked out. So thanks for doing this with me today.
My pleasure.
All right, so Preferred Hotels and Resorts, everybody knows what that's all about, and congratulations on celebrating 50 years this year, officially on January 29th of this year. That's pretty exciting stuff there, Lindsey.
It's a huge milestone for the company, and we were so enthusiastic about being able to celebrate it, and it's the beginning of what's going to be a 12-month celebration because I like to celebrate successes, so why not celebrate for 12 whole months?
I like that. I think we should just celebrate for the next 50 years, Lindsey.
Well, we're excited because we're gearing up for the next 50, and I keep telling people that 50 is sort of like the new 30. It's an important milestone for us, but I think the company is more nimble and younger than ever, and at the speed at which things are changing, you have to be that way. So. Except we're proud about it, but we also feel very young.
Yeah, I like that you're saying that 50 is the new 30, because as I'm getting closer to 50, that gives me some hope, because I remember growing up as a kid, when you hit 50, it was pretty much, it was over for you, at least from my little kid perspective. Everyone seemed so old at that age, but now that we're getting closer to there, it seems not so old.
I agree.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit before we get into where we're going and what you're up to now. I want to learn a little bit about the history of the company, because the hospitality business 50 years ago, we're talking 1963, it was such a different type of universe. Brands like Holiday Inn were just starting up. We didn't really have the system that it was today. So it was I would think, a pretty radical idea to put together a portfolio of properties at that time. So how did the company start? What was the inspiration for it? And let's go from there.
Absolutely. No, it's a great history. Yeah, so obviously 50 years ago, 1968, there was 12 independent hoteliers. I think that they were obviously friends through the industry, decided to create some sort of an organization where they would cross-market and sell each other. They were not in competing markets to compete with the big chains. And what's interesting is one of those original 12 members was actually a Ritz-Carlton hotel, but that was back when there was only one Ritz-Carlton.
So it was the Ritz-Carlton.
It was the Ritz-Carlton.
That's cool.
So, and that group, over time just continued to, grow the membership base. And it's been a really amazing story and journey when You look at the fact it started with 12 hoteliers who were just passionate about this independent hotel space that really felt that, the uniqueness and one-of-a-kind nature of them really was a competitive advantage to the chains. And now fast forward 50 years later, and we have 650 hotels in over 85 countries. And there's a lot of history in between, in terms of the growth of the company. But now you look at it in the competitive set. Every major chain has gotten into a version of what we do now. So it's been exciting because it's a validation of what we've been doing for 50 years. It certainly shows that this is what the traveler and consumer is really craving. They've got so much access to information with the internet and all these review sites that what used to be, hey, I want to stay at a chain because I know it's consistent and I know what to expect, has now swung the other way, where it's I don't want consistency. I want unique. I want experiences. I want one of a kind. I want bragging rights. So it's created a little more competition for us, but as I said, it's really helped us validate that what we've been doing for a lot longer is really where the industry is headed.
All right, Lindsey, I think you're stealing a line from my keynote speeches that I do on the road with the bragging rights part, because I talk about that all the time. I think that today's customer is really interested in having those unique and potentially rarefied experiences that their friends and family, whomever, are going to be jealous of. So they want to come home and say, "You're not going to believe what I did," right?
Correct.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. So, going back a little bit, I find it interesting that in the late 1960s that the hoteliers were thinking that way, because most of the industry seemed to be independent. It was really before the age of the major brands took over, and in terms of the consumer consciousness. So it sounds like they were really thinking ahead, saying, hey, instead of us marketing this one hotel in this one location, we could kind of have an umbrella over us and kind of rise all of the boats in the water, right?
Absolutely. That was exactly what they were thinking. So it was, and for them to, obviously as one standalone hotel, it also kind of goes to how can you leverage the strength? Like, hey, we could co-op advertising, that there's strength in numbers. You can do a lot more together. And yeah, they had a vision well beyond that. They were focused on a longer term vision of really what the travelers were looking for.
Yeah.
And it was quick, started in the U.S., but quickly expanded into Europe and then Asia. I mean, I think it took a little less than 5 years for us to grow internationally.
Wow. What do you think it is that made you grow internationally so quickly, other than the fact that you've been jet setting all over the planet making it happen?
Well, I wasn't here 50 years ago, but
I meant as the brand, really. Yeah.
Yeah. I think what happened is obviously it was a membership-based organization. At that point in time, the hotels were actually the shareholders in the company. It grew substantially in the U.S., and they quickly realized, hey, for us to really compete effectively, we need to have an international presence. And so there was a very thoughtful and strategic approach to grow in the European market, because that was obviously one of the major feeder markets. And then ultimately, quite a few years later, they ended up buying two other brands, one that was very strong in Europe, one that was very strong in Asia, that really helped springboard the growth of the company. So, they wanted to compete on a global scale like all the other major chains. They wanted to have a footprint globally, so that when a traveler was looking for that property, they had bragging rights that they could find one anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and it's so important to have that community of hoteliers, I think, all kind of partnering with each other for mutual success. It's such a radical idea at the time, and has only, as you said a little bit earlier, intimated it's become even more important as time goes on, to have that sense of togetherness so everybody could be successful. And I remember when Choice Hotels first introduced Ascend Collection. I'm forgetting how many years ago it's been. You probably would know. It's probably like 7, 8, even 9 years ago at this point. First thing I thought of is, they're copying companies like Preferred Hotels and Resorts. What an interesting twist that is, and how odd that must have been for you to see the major brands coming in trying to do what you've done so successfully.
Well, absolutely. And I got asked that question a lot. How do you feel about this increased competition So I said I'm a glass half full person. I said I think it's great. It's going to keep us on his toes, and again, it's validating what we've been doing, but we've been doing it 50 years longer than them.
Yeah.
So, and I you could say that there's a little bit of irony behind chains coming out with independent brands, but I think it's ultimately been good for, just like I said, highlighting the type of properties that we have, highlighting what Preferred has been doing for a long time, and really celebrating the beauty and joy behind these one-of-a-kind properties.
Right. Now, other than you say, hey, I prefer that hotel, what are some of the qualifications that make sure that a hotel fits in with the overall character of the brand? Now, this is where it kind of gets confusing, because obviously each hotel needs to be independent. So when I say character, I think I'm talking more about the spirit of the property, the quality that I would expect, and maybe some of the amenities are there. How does that work for your organization to make sure that you're always putting together the best portfolio of properties and of 650 that you found so far?
That's a great question, because one of the major cornerstones of the brand and the promise has to do around, we have a very rigorous quality assurance program. So when hotels join, there's a couple things, and I could put it in buckets. First we're looking at the destination. Is a destination that we feel fits the travelers that we're looking at. Then you look at the location within the destination, and then you're looking at benchmarking it against our quality assurance standards. So we've evolved those over time. I mean, at one point in time, it was 1,600 different things that we were inspecting, heavily obviously weighted towards the service experience, but definitely the overall product.
1,600? That's crazy.
1,600. We've pared it down a little bit, because I think
now it's down to an easily manageable 1,495. Is that what it is?
I think there's about a little over 600 now.
Okay.
And part of it's because what people consider luxury and service requirements have changed. It used to be like you have to have a telephone in the bathroom, for example.
Yeah, that is not luxury. That to me is just ick, perhaps.
It's the box. Now with cell phones, you don't need that. And it used to be you have to use a first and last name.
That's right.
Well, we've learned internationally, there's certain cultures where not only would that be challenging, but it also could be considered inappropriate. So, we've evolved a lot of the standards, I think, to fit the changing expectations in terms of what a traveler perceives as a luxury experience. So we still have this, and each year our hotels, and we work with a third party that goes in and does unannounced quality assurance inspections. So they benchmark against that criteria. In addition to, we have an online reputation management tool that integrates. So we're looking at feedback on a daily basis from the guests. So it's a long-winded answer for the quality assurance piece of the brand is incredibly important, and we think that's, like I said, it's the brand promise that an individual traveler or a travel agent, has confidence that the hotels in the brand are going to meet certain service and product expectations, and we monitor it very closely.
It sounds very challenging, because luxury to people today is not what you said it used to be, with having certain things. I think it's more about how we feel and about the potential for the setting the stage for the experiences that you could possibly have. So besides having your 600 plus checklist, is it sometimes more of a gut feeling, that the vibe of the place or the image that it projects fits within the portfolio of products?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've got a team all around the globe that's responsible for going out and bringing hotels on board, and they all come from the hotel industry, so they have a good sense. I mean, when you walk into a property, from the minute you step through the door, what's that sense of arrival like? Does the hotel have an authenticity that, I always say 99.9% of our hotels, if you never left the property, you're going to have an amazing experience. It's an experience in its own right. And that's really what we're looking for. That if you never left the hotel, you said, wow, I really felt like I experienced the destination, and whether it's the culinary or the spa or family programming, or, there's just a list of things. These hotels all have very unique experiential components to it that, you're going to walk away feeling like you did something very special.
Yeah, and that's what I guess it's really all about today, trying to set yourself apart, creating that special experience as opposed to just having a fungible experience, one that you can have anywhere that's kind of the same old. So, how important then is the design of the hotel and the staff in setting that right atmosphere to be reflective of a property that's a preferred hotel and resort?
They're both very, very important. I mean, I think that obviously a design aesthetic is what can make something very memorable. I mean, we call it obviously the Instagrammable moment. So I think a lot of hotels, are getting even more and more creative on that. How do you create space that people want to take photographs in? That you bring the public space to life a lot more as well, versus it just being about the guest room. But at the end of the day, I really think the service component equates for almost 75% of the overall experience, because
Agreed.
I think we've all had that. You could stay at a property that maybe isn't the most stunning, beautiful design per se, but if the service component of it is strong, that's what you remember. I mean, and I could count all kinds of stories of things that when you're on property that the hotel staff has done that just really wow you. You know that they're paying attention and that they're empowered to make sure you're having a phenomenal experience while you're there.
I'll tell you what, Lindsey, I think you are you're absolutely right with the way that you're addressing this particular issue, because I think, to me, particularly in 2018 and beyond, as technology becomes more and more part of what can take part on the hotel and pre-arrival and post-arrival, I'm so nervous that the hospitality industry is going to lose that connection with the customer on that personal human basis. So to hear you talk about how the staff is really important in bringing those experiences to life and making sure people feel connected to the property, that is, I think, an essential lesson that we should all take away. So how are the hotels that are excelling in the preferred hotels and resorts portfolio making sure that the staff is having those opportunities to interact and bond with the guests in a way that the guests are going to leave home and say, I had a great experience because of XYZ people?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a lot of it, it's a lot of things. And I think hotels that do it well and are paying attention, they're paying attention to what people are saying online about the property. I think coming to we do a global conference every year where all of our hotels are invited. We spend a lot of time talking about industry trends, best practices, talking through those things. And so from a peer-to-peer basis, I think a lot of it too is just, hey, what are you doing to keep that that type of service element alive? There's all sorts of different training programs that are out there. So your product's one piece of it, but at the end of the day, everybody's competing on a service standpoint. So I think. And you can tell the hotels that are excelling, I think that they do a good job of sharing what that looks like.
They sure do.
I find it fascinating. Like, I love when you go to hotels, and whether it's you're there a couple of days and the person who serves you breakfast remembers exactly how you like your coffee, and that you want a side of sriracha with your eggs, or the bartender who remembers your favorite drink, or the doorman who just has a really nice way about him talking while he's waiting to get you a car. There's so many little things that I think when hotels get it and they empower their on-property team to do those things, it's awesome.
So how do you
feel very special?
How do you think the best general managers are making sure that their staff goes ahead and do those kinds of things? I feel like it's almost taking a nod from your leadership style about how you're trying to make your people that travel around the globe and within the organization in New York and elsewhere function.
Yeah, it's funny. I think there's two types of general managers now, and I think the ones that are doing it well are the ones that are still out in front of house meeting guests. That piece has evolved over time. There's now a lot of general managers who spend a lot of time in the back office, and they're like you said, tied to the technology a little bit more versus being very customer facing. And, I just think that the GMs, except that spend more time with the guests, I think have a really good sense of that. And, and the staff notices it. They notice how the GM is interacting with the clients. They also spend a lot more time talking to their team and asking them, tell me about challenges that are taking place operationally, so that they can empower them to come up with solutions on their own. So I think it's a little bit twofold. And, I think it's the GMs that are very people-oriented versus being very systems or process-oriented.
So is that like your leadership style as well, getting out there, being with people, leading by example?
Very, very much so. That's why I'm on the road a lot. We've got.
So you're not running away from demons then. You're just doing your job. Because for me, it's escaping the horrible truth of my reality. So it's good to know that you're well adjusted.
Yeah. I tell people I like the challenge of a problem that you can say, and I love it. I'm like, God, if there's a problem, let's raise it fast and we can fix it fast. Like, I don't want people to be afraid to say we have a problem or we screwed up. It's like, hey, that's okay. We all make mistakes. The recovery is the most important part. How can we turn it around? How can we recover quickly? So that's why I think it is important to be out in the field. And I have also realized, we're a global company, and the way things are done around the globe can vary dramatically. And so I can't sit here in my office in Newport Beach and understand what that means unless I'm out in the field with them. And I've learned some interesting things as I've traveled around the globe. I thought, why didn't anybody tell me this?
Right. So that's fascinating because, all right, so what works here in America is not necessarily going to work in Asia or work in Africa, for example, just to name a few continents. So when you go there and you're experiencing it, you have to kind of tailor your leadership style a little bit to some of the cultural norms that are there, plus some of the just other the specifics for the people as well. Is that kind of how you're doing things?
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
how do you know then if something works here in New York that it is or isn't going to work in Japan?
Well, I think that's where I rely on my team in the local markets. I rely on them to say, listen, Lindsey, this isn't going to work here, but here's what will work. And then it's our job to figure out how to adapt that. And I think, I've just learned, especially when you think about it, these are all independent hotels. I mean,
right.
Like by nature, they're programmed, not only from a geographic standpoint or cultural standpoint, but literally physically about, they're different. So you just have to be able to look at the scenario and say, okay, how can we adapt? And I rely heavily on my team within the markets to come back and say, this is what's going to work for us, and this is what's going to support our hotels within the market.
Yeah, I love that. Now, when it comes to hotel owners and developers, it seems like that pendulum to be solely branded hotels is now swinging rapidly back the other way, especially in times of an upmarket. Everybody wants to, it seems, create a hotel that reflects them personally or whatever their vision is. What is it about the independent hotel space you think is really captivating developer interest, and where do you see that going?
It's a couple of things. One is from a financial standpoint. If you're in the right market, it from a financial standpoint, it's very advantageous to be an independent. The overall kind of fee structure and the way that the independent groups like ourselves are set up is very, very different than the chains. Not only in terms of the length of the contract, but the way that the fees are set up.
Right.
So there's one driving factor. You hit upon something too. It's this idea of having a property that is a reflection of whether it's you personally or of the destination. I think there's just a lot of fun and pride that goes into building something that's very unique and very different. And I think developers and hotel owners find that fun. It's not a cookie cutter. It's not here's if you're with a chain, here's the specs. Here's the type of sheets you got to buy. You don't have that flexibility and creativity that I think a lot of hotel owners and developers now really enjoy.
Is there a common thread of a personality trait that you see with these renegade independent hoteliers as opposed to folks that build more traditional branded hotels, perhaps?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I never thought about it before until it just came out of my mouth randomly just now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. In general, I maybe it's because I spend a lot of time with them. I find them wildly entertaining, and they all have wicked sense of humor. But I think in general, the hospitality industry tends to attract a really fun, curious group of people.
Yeah, it sure does.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But maybe more hands-on. I'll have to think about that though. I like the psychology question behind it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of pop psychology, or at least pretending that I know things about the human experience. So again, when it comes to these owners, they're creating their own independent-minded properties. Are you also finding that in other places outside the United States, perhaps there's that heightened emphasis on being very local in flavor and feel when it comes to developing properties? Or is that more of a USA kind of feeling?
No, that is definitely true globally. Go around the globe, and if you visit our properties, you're definitely going to see that, like I said, that sense of place for the destination, very authentic. And I mean, that's it kind of runs throughout, whether it's the restaurants that they put in place, the way they decorate. I mean, that is true across the globe. So
that's obviously the big trend of today. So what's next? What's going to be happening in your space of independent hotels? And, pretty much just give me a summary of what you plan to do for the next 50 years. I keep it to 3 minutes, okay?
Sure. Okay, whatever. 50 years and 3 minutes. Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, the speed at which things are changing is incredible.
Right.
So I think when I look at the next 50 years, we definitely plan on continuing to grow the portfolio. There's still, the world is a big place, so there's still markets that we look at that we either don't have hotels yet, or we have very few, and so we've got a very strategic, I'll call it, growth plan in terms of our footprint. But really, we're now just focused on a lot more of the experiences. How do we better cater to the travelers and specific experience? And I always say people travel for different reasons, and they stay at different places for different reasons. So if you're traveling with your family, it's different than if you're traveling romantic getaway versus if you're going on a girlfriend's getaway trip. So how can we continue to tailor those experiences and tell the stories about our hotels that meet those specific experiences that the traveler is looking for? And
then understanding what experience a traveler is looking for at that particular time. That's such a challenge to me because how are you supposed to know if I want to be coming because it's business, or if I'm going to be here on a family trip, or I'm going to be going for that guy's weekend away? That seems to be a little bit of a challenge.
It is, and I think that's the interesting thing about technology now. And I probably shouldn't even talk about things like this because I know just enough to be dangerous. But when I at the things that you now track on the web, and people's behaviors as they open up newsletters or click through your website, and you can, it basically starts to profile. I can just tell by the fact the person keeps clicking on beach destinations that they're probably trying to go to a beach destination, or if they're clicking on family-related things. So you can serve up and tailor content based on behavior. So, it helps you a little bit, but I think ultimately it's our job as a brand to make it easy for a person who's either coming to your website or, flipping through a directory to identify, hey, wow, they've broken it out with these are hotels that, that really corner the market in terms of whether it's wellness or family travel or et cetera, adventure or retreats. So we want to make it easy for the travelers to find exactly the type of experience they want, or maybe in the case they don't know and they're just starting their inspirational journey, and we can kind of help guide that path. So we'll continue to evolve that, and I think it's where I love the fact that we've got 650 great hotels that just have countless experiences. So that's a big focus. Another area that is growing is our residence product. With the growth of, I'll call it, you go from Airbnb to the Inspiratos of the world and the One Fine Stays. We really think, obviously that's a growing market, and we're very focused on expanding the residence component because we think we have a unique niche in that we sit right in between. You can have a residential product for, whether somebody's doing a big family trip or traveling with multiple people, but you have all the benefits and services of a hotel attached to it. So it's
Well, that makes
it's a win-win.
That makes an awful lot of sense because over the last 15 years, and you know this, I'm saying this more for people listening, a lot of these major luxury products have that residential component in it because when they sell that real estate, it helps finance the whole thing, plus drives business to the restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. So now what you're talking about is being able to put temporary guests in some of those locations for that bigger space, which I think is also on trend because everybody kind of wants to, if you're on a family getaway, kind of be together as opposed to in separate rooms and then meet in the lobby.
Absolutely. And it's funny, if you look at hotels that are new builds and or renovations, you're seeing them put in more residential components. And sometimes that's just more in multi-bedroom suites or villas or, because that is really what the traveler's looking with. I mean, the baby boomers in particular, they're doing these big, multi-gen trips. And so, and they do want to be together. So we're very focused on that space. We will continue to grow it.
Right. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I feel exactly the same way as a traveler because I'm a family of 4. I got twin boys, and now they're basically the size of, they're bigger than the wife and almost my size now, right? So, I want that bigger space because a regular hotel room just isn't going to cut it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for a lot of people too, especially if they've got kitchens in them. I mean, I laugh. I've got 3 nephews and a niece, and when we travel with them, my dad says, God, there's just times where I don't know that I want to pay for the $12 glass of orange juice that one of the kids is going to knock over and spill. So it's kind of nice to feel like right. Even if I'm able to have the orange juice there, that it's the little things that just, like I said, by being able to have a more residential space when you're traveling as a group, it's just nice. But to have all the services of a hotel, I think is really what's going to set us apart from an Airbnb type of scenario. So we think we're excited about it. We're very excited about that. And then the third thing that we're really focused on is the loyalty piece of the business. And we laugh because obviously every major chain has a loyalty program, points based, and we spent a lot of time analyzing what we wanted to do and how we could be unique and different. And it's not just about points. It is how can we keep it more experiential and be nimble. So that's another area that we're continuing to invest in, to grow. And I think we can be more nimble than a lot of the other programs that have been around for a really long time. And we're going to continue to evolve and really look at ways in which we can be different. Because I think you don't want people to be loyal just because of points. You want them to be loyal because they love the brand. And what are the things that we can do that are really special and unique that it's not just about the point.
So do what the airlines are not doing is basically what you're coming away with. Because when it comes to me and flying, I'm all about the points, and I don't really care about the airline itself. I'm not connecting with them emotionally like I would like to with a brand such as Preferred Hotels and Resorts, for example. Because I think that's where you're headed. It all makes sense. Beautiful. I think it wraps it all up into a nice little bow. Lindsey, is there anything that we haven't talked about today that you wanna share?
No, I think you hit on all the highlights. You got a little bit of history. Where we're headed. Hopefully, gave everybody a little bit more insight in terms of at least how we bring the properties into the portfolio. And we're just really excited about celebrating 50 and definitely the next 50. I hope I'll be a lot older then, but
yeah. Well, seriously,
I need to be around.
I'm going to have you back in February of 2068. So get ready for that interview. Hopefully we'll talk way before then, and I'll get to see you soon in person, and maybe get to see some of your amazing hotels as part of the collection. So thanks for
that would be fantastic.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. But before we go, Lindsey, you have to do this for me. It's time for a shameless plug. Plug away. Tell us what people want to do. You got as much time as you need now for preferredhotels.com and any other message you want to get out there.
Oh my gosh!
I know.
Plug.
I know it's rough. Got to promote yourself.
I mean, I think Preferred Hotels and Resorts is the brand for anybody to stay at when they're looking to travel, business, pleasure. I mean, 650 hotels, 85 countries. I mean, countless experiences. I think I always say you can be, are you a tourist or are you a traveler? I think that people that are travelers stay in Preferred Hotels and Resorts. It's just it's for the independent-minded person who, like I said, is just curious and wants to look at the world in a very different way. And I think besides that, I'd tell people that hashtag the preferred life, because that's really what we're selling. We think that when you're traveling and staying with us, you really are experiencing what we like to call the preferred life.
Beautiful.
So,
I love it.
There's my plug.
All right, so thank you so much. All right, so Lindsey Ueberroth, CEO of Preferred Hotels and Resorts. Make sure you check him out at preferredhotels.com. Thank you so much for being here. It was fun talking to you today, and I hope to see you out and about on the conference circuit soon.
Sounds great.
Excellent. And to all of you listening today, I want to thank you all for being a part of the show. And we will be back next week. That is, unless I just decide to go check out Preferred Hotels in all 85 countries that they're in 650 locations. In that case, I might be back in 2 weeks. Just kidding. I will be back next week. Thanks for listening. This is Glenn. And for Lindsey, thanks for being here. Take care and bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at TravelingGlenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.